move that bus. Like, that was on, bro.
So I just remember like laying on my back, like at the bottom of this embankment, just being like, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing?
I gotta say, bro, I base how funny I am off whether or not you laugh. So now I'm feeling like I'm not that funny.
What's going on, young adults? Welcome to the Counter the Culture podcast. This is our second of these podcasts where we are going through our Counter the Culture curriculum together, and we're getting guests in that we just think suit the topics, that we can pick their brains over what we're learning as young adults. And so we want to have a bit of fun doing it and get to know some of the people from around Crossroads as well. And so welcome to the podcast. My name's Jake, and of course, Pastor Ezra, our youth pastor, is here hosting with me on the podcast as well. And today, we are so excited to be able to have Pastor Isaac Pettersen, our discipleship pastor, on the podcast. And, you know, our curriculum kind of rotation that we're going through at Young Adults this month is individualism. And we're looking at countering the culture of individualism in the world. And you know, when we were looking at finding a guest for this podcast, I talked to Ezra. Ezra was actually away at the time, and I was texting him, and I said to him, bro, who is the most selfless person that we know? And in my mind, I already had an idea, and Ezra just came straight back without like any doubt, and said the same person, and he said Isaac, and I agreed that's who I had in mind, and that's then so Ezra, he asked Maylee, and she says, yeah, Isaac, that's who it is.
Wow,
and so,
boys,
so there you go, bro. It's not just us; it's three people that have actually said that.
Yeah, well, what I thought you were going to say is I had someone in mind, but then Ezra just Isaac. So that's
All right, he had someone.
We couldn't get them, and the budget didn't stretch.
Look, you were number 4 on the list, but here we are. We're here nonetheless. But it's good to have you here, bro, and we're stoked to have you here. Isaac, it's a strong name. Do you know what it means?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's not as strong as it maybe sounds. It just means laughter, and it means laughter, and seems to be something that I just have to live out. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, that sums you up pretty well.
Yeah, I laugh at a lot of things, and sometimes I think, why? Like, why am I laughing? It wasn't even that funny, and then I remember, well, it's just who I am from day one.
I got to say, bro, I base how funny I am off whether or not you laugh. So now I'm feeling like I'm not that funny.
I get so much satisfaction when Isaac laughs. It just feels like, because everybody respects Isaac, right? Yeah. And so when you get that little chuckle from him on the other side of the room, because it is a wee chuckle, and I like it, and it brings a lot of satisfaction to me.
But now I know that that's what you're supposed to do. I don't feel so special.
I know. And I feel like it's a low bar because I feel like I do laugh at a lot of things. Not that what you're saying isn't funny. I just...
I also think that, like, I think that if we miss the mark, you're not afraid to tell us as well. So I feel like...
I don't think I've ever missed the mark then, because I've never been told. Wow, that's massive. I'm sorry.
It doesn't happen so often, but I think it does happen. I think you're honest. I appreciate that about you, though.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
So do I. What does your name mean, bro? Do you know?
Yeah, I think it means, because like if we go back to Jacob in the Bible, I think it means like kind of clutching at the heel of another, or like being a bit like deceitful, or like trying to pull somebody else down to get yourself up, because that was the story of Jacob, right?
So
how do you
feel about
deceitful
that?
Well, look, I don't know, they were going to just call me Jake. Mum and Dad were just going to call me Jake. That was going to be my official name. So when they chose the name Jacob, Jake was always sort of intended.
So you've always been Jake?
I've always been Jake to my family. Grew up through high school, and right throughout my schooling, actually, nobody called me Jake. I was Jacob there, but to family, I was always Jake. And then when I came to university, I was sick of having two names, and I moved to Palmerston North from Christchurch. Right. So I decided it was time for a rebrand, and I became Jake.
Wow. And what a rebrand it is.
Wow.
I feel like I called you Jacob for the first little while.
Oh, you did?
And it took me a while to realize.
A lot of people, because, you know, you see it on socials, and I'm Jacob on socials.
Yeah. Bro, when we first met, like, I obviously didn't know you. That's kind of what happens when you first meet someone, right? But anyway, I've got you saved on my phone as Jake Kendrew Crossroads.
Yeah.
And so every time I'm trying to text you and I put in for a new text, I always type in Jake and nothing comes up, and I have to remember, his name's Jacob.
Yeah.
So
the reason they didn't call me Jake was because they didn't want me to be called Jake the Snake. That was just genuinely...
Which is what you get called a lot, isn't it?
One of the family... Never.
If the meaning of Jacob is deceitful, heel grabber, Jake the Snake's probably...
It kind of fits.
Sort of
it does. It's the whole brand.
Yeah. Jake the Snake. No, I don't like it. It doesn't suit you, bro. Jake the Snake is not you.
I sometimes get conflicted about not being called Jacob, because I do feel like that's a stronger name. Like when I became a pastor, I seriously considered, right, is this the time I switch back to Jacob? Feels like it packs more authority or something.
Yeah, Jake.
See, but that happens to me with Ruben, our lead pastor, because I always type in Ruby in my phone to text him.
Right.
But he's because you know how
Ruben.
on iPhone you can set your own contact name.
Yeah.
He set it to Ruben, and I.
So you still call Ruben Ruby? Because I know
I do.
like that was a bit before I got here. He was called Ruby. You still kind of call him Ruby?
Yeah, I do.
Right.
Yeah,
Do you hear me call him Ruby? Because I feel like you don't.
No, I've always
Because I made a conscious real effort to try and change it for him because I knew that he prefers Ruben these days.
Right,
But,
yeah. Any nicknames for Isaac?
Yeah, my family will call me Zach, but then like every environment I've been in, there's already been a Zach present. Like I've got a brother-in-law Zach. There was Zach's at school, at university. So just everywhere I've gone, there's not been the opportunity. So it's just a family name.
Is Izzy an option?
It is an option. Yeah, it is an option. But I said sort of.
He's like, it's an option. Never call me Izzy.
Guy, though, that's not going to be offended whatever somebody calls you, right? Like if they nicknamed you, would you be like put off by that? Like, oh,
No, and Izzy would be fine. To be honest, back in high school when we all thought we were cool and tried to like graffiti our names, I would put Izzy. I would do that.
Double ZY.
Double ZY.
Come on.
Double ZY.
Yeah, you're the man, bro. Well, can I go Izzy then? If you go, because like that's the problem. Izzy,
that's going to be
Izzy.
confusing.
Izzy and Izzy.
Yeah.
I like Ezra. I don't need a nickname.
Ezra's strong, bro. Thanks.
Yeah.
What does Ezra mean?
Helper. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Deceitful one? Helper.
Yeah. Anyway, Isaac, bro, pleasure to have you here. Can you, we'd love to obviously our young adult community, they know you. They've heard you preach. You've told bits of your story throughout that. But I wonder if you could kind of just bring it all together and tell us what was life like for you growing up, schooling years, uni years. Just talk us through it. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Thinking about, this podcast being Counter the Culture and thinking about my story, I think for me, so I grew up in a Christian family, so I knew about Jesus from a young age. But right from an early age, I also just seemed to have a predisposition that I wasn't brave enough to be honest about my faith and what we believed. And I remember realizing that at a real young age, I would have been 5 or 6, maybe 7, just realizing, I'm not up for talking about that. And I don't know why. It was just that just seemed to be who I was from the start. And then when I was 10, we moved overseas to Scotland, where my parents were doing mission work. And the school that I went to in Scotland, I didn't know anybody who was a Christian. And so, my high school would have been somewhere between 500,000 people, and I didn't know any single Christians. And I was already moving to a culture that was unfamiliar and different, and I was already trying to fit into that. And so that sort of just I think really it multiplied that feeling of I can't talk about it. I'm already different enough in this place. There doesn't seem to be anybody else around who shares what I believe, and so I can't tell anybody this. And so I did believe in Jesus. I was baptized when I was 8, but it was really sort of a living in two worlds.
Wow.
I did want to pursue faith in some ways, but in other ways I just didn't want to and couldn't bring myself to really genuinely living that out. And so through my high school years I didn't, and that sort of desire to follow Jesus lessened, and I just stepped more and more into living a completely different life.
Wow.
And and that really got to a point where when I was just not long before my 17th birthday, it really all kind of came to a head where just a whole bunch of different things had piled on, and I just was not stoked with my life. And because I had Christian family and we were at church on Sundays and stuff, I knew I was being taught the sorts of things of how I should live. So in the background I was aware, and I'd have these wrestles with God where I would talk about God, I know I shouldn't be living like this,
right.
So it wasn't I was just completely ignoring it. I knew it was there. And then everything sort of piled up. I had there was a period of time where I got caught up in something and blamed for something that I didn't do. And so there were some guys from another school that were coming looking for me at night to jump me and stuff. So I was
bro, this sounds like a movie.
Yeah, bro, it was getting pretty wild. And so I would I started having panic attacks at night and stuff, just worried that these guys were going to find me, because these guys had found other people before and it had ended up pretty badly. And I don't know, I'd hurt like a few, like the girl that I was dating. I'd been, pretty like hurtful and unfaithful to her in lots of ways. And I don't know, it all kind of came to a point where I was like, I just hate this. Like I'm not satisfied. I feel like I'm wasting my life. I remember one night I was out with some friends. We were just hanging out in the park. We'd been drinking. There was a girl who asked if I'd walk her home, and I said, yeah, sure. I walked her home, and then it started raining. And so when I got back to the park, all my mates were gone, and I didn't know where they had gone. And everybody had been drinking, so nobody would have been thinking to like, oh, we need to let them know. And when I tried to text people, like no answer. So I went looking for them, trying to figure out where they were. And anyway, I just like couldn't find them, wasn't thinking straight. I was at this park, and I was like, oh, I need to get down to the other park, which was down the hill. So I like just started heading down this embankment, and I just slipped and fell in the rain. And so I just remember like laying on my back, like at the bottom of this embankment, just being like, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing? And so that was sort of a moment where I knew things had to change, but I still just didn't have the strength within myself to change things. But that summer, just a couple months later, my parents sent me away to the States to see some friends, go to a Christian camp. They knew that I was struggling, and they thought, like, let's just get him out of this place for a little bit. And yeah, there I heard a guy's testimony. His story sounded like my story. Wow. And I just thought, like, I got to get out of this now. Like, this guy's story went on for many more years past mine, and I just thought, that's where I'm going to end up. Things need to change. And and God just met me in that time. I just surrendered and said, I'm all in. And I feel like God met me there. I feel like I was filled with the Holy Spirit. I didn't really have like a theology for that at the time because the environment I was in didn't really lean into those things. Yeah. But now I know like that's what happened. And from that day forward, it was just like things are gonna be different. And but God still got me out of there. Like I wanted things to be different, but I knew if I went back to Scotland, I just wouldn't have the personal strength to change the way I was living. And so I ended up going to the States, going to Bible college, and just chose for it to be different. Like I was like, I am going to be who God's made me to be, and not in some sort of like, not in some sort of like, oh, I was living for others and now I'm living for myself. It was more like, as like John Mark Homer often says, like you're always being formed by something. And I was like, I was letting other people form me, and now I was deciding, like now I'm going to let God form me.
That's powerful. That's powerful.
I love that. I love the imagery of like your low place, like your rock bottom was at rock bottom.
Literally a low place.
You fell down a bank. Like you couldn't get any more of a movie than that.
There's power in that.
Turn around at the bottom of the cliff.
Bro, what's interesting is like, so you said you were 10 when you moved to Scotland, right?
Yeah.
When I was 19 deciding where to go to uni, I was too scared to leave Palmerston North. Because I love this city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now I'm sitting here beside someone that's lived in Scotland, lived in the States. Anywhere else?
No. Spent a bit of time, like 3 months in Korea, but I don't think you could say
Korea.
living.
Let's go Korea. So you've lived in these like
I've lived 3 months nowhere else.
Yeah. That's me. Like I've been a week in Hamilton for a block course. Like, but I stand by the fact that Palmerston North is the greatest city in the world, next to someone who's been some other places. Surely back me up. Like you're raising your family in Palmerston North. You can see some gold here.
Yeah. If you're raising a family here, I think Palmy is like the place to be. Like for other reasons, like other places are better for other reasons. But once I had kids, I was like, no, this is a great spot to be.
Yeah. So and to follow Jesus, Palmy is a great place, right?
It actually is, man.
Yeah, come on.
I think like there really is something about our city where like if you've been here a long time, you don't really realize that there is like a level of faith in the city that is like, it just feels higher than in other places. And then you spend time in other places and you think, oh, wow, like I didn't realize how like present God is in our city.
Do you, like, what do you put that down to? Do you just think that's because of volume of believers? Like, because I've heard this spoken about before and maybe, like, in particular circles it gets heightened, but like about, oh, that place has a real favor on it, or that place is like, just the Spirit of the Lord is dwelling there. Is that just because there's more believers there, do you think? Or do you think that that's like, no, like there are some places where it's just like, wow, like the Spirit's on the move there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think like volume would definitely make it a difference. But yeah, there has been like, we had a group visit one time and they were basically touring around the whole country, and they said through our whole tour of the country there have been 2 places that have stood out to us, and they said it's the Manawatu and Rotorua, and they said those 2 places it feels like God is really just doing something different. Wow. And yeah, I don't know what to attribute that to other than like just the grace of God, but something about this area, something about this place, it just feels like there's a real openness to God moving, and he does.
Because we get a bad rap sometimes, like,
yeah,
like, yeah, okay, the river stinks. Like, But but like we're hearing stuff like that. It's like, yeah, but God's moving here, and like I want to be, and I want other people to be where God's moving.
Yeah.
So thanks, bro. I love that. Palmy, P Naughty, greatest city in the world.
All right, Prince of Palmy.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Speaking of nicknames, Prince of Palmy, there it is. You can all call me that.
Awesome. Well, hey, we've got this little game that we do here on the podcast, and I say that having only done it once before, but we're hoping it's going to become a thing.
100% is a thing.
And we call it Kingdom or Culture. And basically it's quick fire, and we just want to run you through some things, and we want to hear whether or not you think that this is something that could be a part of the kingdom of God, or it's something we need to completely counter. It's culture. And so, let's run through some things. So it's quick fire. Me and Ezra will go between the two of us. So first topic we've got here for you today is sharing your quiet time on Instagram. Kingdom or culture?
Yeah, I'm going to be positive. I'm going to say kingdom. I think, if you're just doing it for people to see it, cool, that's your reward. But if you're sharing it because you're like, hey, this is what I learned today, then I think that can be kingdom. And I guess it just comes down to motives.
Sure.
Do you think a positive or a good kind of measure is like if you're spending more time sharing your quiet time than
positioning the Bible next to
in
the
your
coffee?
quiet time?
Yeah.
Do you think that's probably like a good measure of it?
Yeah, that's a good point, man.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Well, on the social media theme then, TikTok preachers or / Christian influencers?
Yeah, again, I think I want to be positive and say kingdom. Like, I think if the reason you're doing it is for the clicks and for the likes, not great. But if you are just sharing, you're just sharing what's helpful to people and God uses that, great. And yeah, I guess, again, just like what Paul says, some people are preaching, like in Philippians, like some people are preaching out of like unhelpful motives, but if Christ is being preached, then let it be. So I think if the good news is getting out there, cool.
Yeah, and it is a massive platform, right? So like to use it is really positive.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a funny one, because I just find in the young adult space, I think the awareness of the dangers of social media has just become so apparent in society today. Like, it used to be kind of a weird thing to push against social media. Now I think everybody understands that, like, there's a lot of danger, there's a lot of harm that can be done through social media, and it's taken a lot of our time and a lot of our brain space, and we can be addicted to it. And so I think that the narrative of it has changed a little bit. And honestly, as a young adults pastor, I would say that, like, it would be a really healthy thing, like, if you can do that, like, to just get off and flee from it, honestly, with some of the temptations that it brings and some of the complications it can bring. But it's also this incredibly powerful place where ministry can be done because it's where everybody is, right? And so it's this tension of like, what do I advise? Like, just get away from it completely, but then I'm not doing that, or just use it as a tool.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, man. No, I'd completely agree. I think
in all of that though, the heart matters, right? It's like the position of your heart. Like, check your heart, and if you can, say, yeah, my heart's in the right place, go for it.
Yeah. And I think there's a responsibility for us who are watching it to test that and give it a bit of a sniff test and be like, something just feels a bit off here.
Yeah, that's because sometimes one quick Google search and you're like, what that guy is saying is so like off the rails. And you're right. We need to test that stuff. Yeah.
This is discernment, and I guess the danger of social media is when you're only being fueled by 30-second clips,
right? And
you're not being fueled by being in the Word. Because as soon as you start getting in the Word, you're going to understand that the Word can be confronting, and it's not just like, it's just not just snappy truth. It's something you have to digest and have to kind of process how that's going to become part of your belief system. And so, let it be a great tool, but not be your sole source of truth. Then.
That's good.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Our next topic is deconstruction. I think this has been popular over the last few years, of like deconstructing our faith and deconstructing what beliefs mean. And I think maybe that can get dangerous. But what do you think? Kingdom or culture? Deconstruction?
Yeah, I think if deconstruction is followed by reconstruction, then I think kingdom. Like I said earlier, my story, like, I grew up with not really a theology for the Holy Spirit to be able to like fill you and be in your life. And so I went through a period of about 2 years when I left the States and came back here of deconstructing my faith, but with the intention that I would reconstruct it. And that took time, and it was worthwhile. And I feel like even today, like in small little bits, I'm constantly deconstructing and reconstructing. So I think if it's just deconstruction for the sake of, I don't want to believe any of this anymore, I'm going to pull it all apart and be angry and bitter, then culture. But if you're like, I think there's some unhelpful things here that I need to pull apart to rebuild in a new way, then I think kingdom.
Yeah. And do it with God, eh? Like that's, it has to be done with God. Is the obvious.
Yeah.
One final one, and I know what side we both are on. but let's just talk about it a little bit. Tattoos, are they kingdom or culture, bro?
Yeah, I think both. I think like, so for example, I've got Psalm 73:26 on my shoulder blade that I got like when I was 18. And one time I was in the spa at the Lido, and a lady saw it and said, "Oh, what's the verse on your back mean?" And so we started talking. And anyway, she had like a really unhelpful Christian experience where a pastor had told her some, I think, really unhelpful things. And we had like a real good yarn, and then ended up actually chatting a few times after that. And so I think like, because of that tattoo, God used it. And so, so I think like tattoos can be used for kingdom, but they can also just be used for culture. You can just get something that you like. And so, I think in like, a lot of the things we've talked about in this whole little game is like, they can be used for either. Yeah. And what's your motives and what's your heart behind it?
Yeah. So how do we, I hope you don't mind me asking, how do we then like talk about the verse in Leviticus that says, do not mark your body, do not tattoo? Like what's your take on that?
Yeah, I don't think I think that's an Old Testament law that's kept in the Old Testament. Most of the things that were done in the Old Testament that we are to continue now that Jesus has come is repeated in the New Testament. That's not one that is, and it's listed with a bunch of other things like not mixing certain materials and stuff with your clothing, which we also do, and again, none of those things are repeated. The thing about them was they were to look different to the culture around them in a physical way, whereas I think today, because we are the temple of the Holy Spirit, we are meant to look different in a spiritual way, the way that we just live our daily life. So, all people are invited in of all cultures to be followers of Jesus. And so we're all going to look different. We're all going to have different customs, and not all of them are bad. And so, so I just don't think that passage in Leviticus is applicable.
So if I'm wanting a tattoo, like, what are some maybe quick things that I should, like, that you reckon I should think about, or that I should kind of do before I just jump into getting this tattoo, to make sure that I'm kind of sticking to the kingdom rather than the culture?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I think the first thing is like, if it is going to cause like tension or disunity with people that are close to you, then like what Paul says about, people like eating meat that's been offered to idols, if it's going to cause a problem for people and cause people to stumble, then just don't do it. Like my parents were not stoked about my tattoo, and I did that without talking to them. So I probably should have respected that and recognized like that's not going to be helpful. I think that's one thing, is like, if people in your close circle, like, I think you got to have the humility to say, I really want this, but I'm going to choose not to because it's not going to be helpful for the people around me.
Yeah.
And then, the other thing is just like, if your tattoo can be used as a tool to like proclaim the good news of Jesus, then like be thinking about that as well. Like, how can I use this to benefit the kingdom rather than it just be a thing for whatever.
One of the things I just love about you, Isaac, and I think it's just been displayed right here, is that you're so considered in so many things. And I think, just even around the staff team, we notice it, that when we have a query or a part of culture that we want to talk about, or anything really, that I can come to Isaac, and whether it be about Android versus iPhone or some deep theological conversation, that Isaac usually has considered that at some point. I think you're a deep thinker. You like to break things apart and figure out the intricacies, and so it's really interesting to talk to you because you're not surface level. You go deep on these things, and I love that. And that's one of the reasons why we've brought you in to have this chat today, and to talk about this idea of individualism and that being a part of culture that we want to stand against. But I want to break that apart and go a little bit deeper, as you do so well, about why that is and what individualism, like we say that title, but what does that actually mean? And so I wonder, would you mind just teaching us for a little second here and just kind of maybe breaking apart that idea of individualism? Like, what even is that? What does that mean in culture?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. And I think it does encompass a lot of things in our culture, so it is helpful to define it, but also it is one thing that affects many things. I think individualism, if I was going to describe it, is that I am the ultimate authority of my life. Like, I decide what is best for me, not others. If I need answers, I look internally, not externally. Wow. What I need is found within myself. And I think the outworkings of that come out in lots of different ways, whether it's like you do you, or just be true to yourself, or this might be showing sort of my stage of life, but me and my wife, we often watch like House Hunters on the HGTV.
He's right there with you.
Well, do you know what? Mine is Grand Designs on TVNZ Plus. Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
Well, what I find is a lot of the time the people will say like, I've just done so much for others and it's time to do something for me. It's another form of individualism coming out that I just think isn't biblical, or stuff like, you can't help others until you help yourself, or charity starts at home. All of those sort of sayings, they all impact different areas of life, but they all stem from I am the authority, like I'm the most important thing in my world.
We can adopt those without even realizing what we're actually saying.
Like even in Christian culture, and this is why we're talking about it, right? But like we can allow those things to seep into being very mainstream, even in the church. And this is cool that we're breaking this apart.
Yeah, I think it's something like, if I was going to say, what's the thing that I subtly hear is like sneak in, like without any like ill intent, is that people saying phrases like that, like you got to help yourself first before you can help others. And people don't mean anything by it, but we're just like in a world where that is so normal that as Christians it's really easy to just think that's just how it is and not recognize, this is actually a worldly thing, a cultural thing, rather than a kingdom thing.
Okay. And so what does that look like? So like kind of look after yourself before you look after others. I can see merit in that, right? And the fact that I don't want to bleed on others. I don't want my trauma to actually pull other people down. Right. And so how do we do that responsibly? How do we, I think like there is something of the kingdom in that, in terms of looking after ourselves and stewarding well the resource that is our life. And so how do you think that maybe that phrase, break that apart, like what does that look like as a Christian to look after ourselves responsibly?
Yeah. Is it all right if we get a little bit nerdy for a minute?
Yeah. Come on, bro. This is what I'm here for. Like, I literally came to get nerdy. Let's go.
I watch Grand Designs. It's no problem.
I think if we're going to understand that and how to do that well, we have to understand why both matter. And I think, like I know on the last podcast, I think Sarah talked about, God said, let us make man in our image. And I think like something really interesting about God is that he is communal in nature. Like he is always a community. He is an individual in the sense that like Father, Son, Holy Spirit are individual personalities, but they are a community, and they always are. And right from the start,
that's good.
God, he seems to have other beings around his throne. Like he's always in community. It seems to be important to him. And so I think when we're made in his image, first of all, we're made male and female, right? And so we need if we're going to understand who God is, then we need each other, because I'm made in God's image, but so is a female. And so together we show who he is. But I think it's more than just that. I think also we need community to understand that God is also community, if that makes sense. Like, so if we aren't doing life with others, then we're going to struggle to understand the image that we're made in. And so I think that those two things are intertwined. I don't think you are an individual and you are a part of community. You are both of those things always. If it's like, we can separate them, and we often end up in unhealthy spaces when we do. And so, I think in terms of if we're going to live in a healthy way following Jesus, then you do have to take care of yourself, because you are an individual that is also a part of community. You're both those things. So I think it's both, and you see that through Scripture, right? There's some assumptions that Paul often makes that you think, is that always like, he's like, I think it's also in Philippians, right? Or is it 1 Corinthians where he says, who would harm their own body? Nobody, right? They take care of it. And so just like, is that you need to take care of each other? Or like, when Jesus is like, to treat others how you want to be treated, essentially, there's this assumption that you are taking care of yourself. And while you're taking care of yourself, you're taking care of others. And so you're always doing both. And so you can't, it's hard to say, well, I just need some time for me, because it's like, no, you're always taking care of you and you're taking care of others. And by taking care of others, you are taking care of yourself. Yeah, right. But also by taking care of yourself, you're taking care of others. And I think those two things intertwine, and so you can't elevate one above the other. And so I don't know if that like practically answers the question that you're asking, but
it leads us into community, right? Because this is why like church is so important. Because like when I am struggling, I can count on my brothers and sisters to pick me up and help me out. Do you think like something that, I think the devil knows this, right? Because when I'm struggling, what's the first thing I want to do? Go and be alone.
Yeah.
Like I want to get it out of the community. Whereas what I think God would have us do is push further into the community. Like, don't take your struggles somewhere else. Bring them in. Let the brothers and sisters get around you and pick you up. And then in turn, you can do that for others.
Yeah, man. With that? I totally agree. And I think in doing that, we are imaging God. Like this is who God is. We are made in his image. And as we are together in community, we understand him better. And I totally agree.
Yeah.
So I think this sort of, in my mind, breaks into kind of another cultural trend that I've noticed, and that's that of boundaries. And definitely that has come into the Christian vocabulary. And again, I see real value in that, but I wonder then, what does it look like to have a healthy boundary of, I actually do need to protect my relationship with God so that I can pour into you? Or am I actually just speaking of the culture right now? What would you say, like boundaries of like for instance, let me talk through it. Like occasionally, maybe kind of 2-3 times a year, I feel like I need to just go and retreat and be with God. I'm doing that in my regular habits, day by day, but sometimes I just feel like, I actually just need to get away from people and just really have intentional time to just to be alone with me and God. And I feel like that fuels me to then go out and care for others and continue to do that sustainably. So would you say that that's a healthy boundary, or would you say that that's pulling away from community and being selfish? I just want to kind of clear up, what does that actually look like in application?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I think that is okay, because when I talk about doing both those things at the same time, sometimes, there is a little bit of back and forth in terms of like, sometimes you're going to be just doing something and you're like, I've just been so heavily community focused. I mean, if you're like running a camp, right? Like your focus that entire time is just like other people, and you don't usually get to slow down for yourself. And so sometimes you do have to counterbalance that. But I think it's really to even it out. And even looking at the life of Jesus, right? He has to get away from time to time, but often he has to do it at really inconvenient times, like in the middle of the night, because he's just so concerned about others and being in community that he struggles to find time. And that doesn't mean that we should like always just like function in a way of like, I'm on the edge of burnout. But I think it's really to counterbalance and be like, I have given a lot lately. I'm gonna go spend some time with Jesus so I can continue to give, rather than being like, wow, I just had like a big season of giving, so the next couple of years they're for me. I'm canceling all my plans.
My quota.
Yeah.
So it's the motive behind it, right? Like, what are you going away for? Like you said, like I need some time to just spend with Jesus. Like I need a retreat and actually spend that time with him, and that's like filling your cup, right? So I think the motive is the important thing, right? Whereas if we're like almost like a pride thing, or like I don't want people to see me this way, would you say that's where it's kind of like, oh, maybe not?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, I think you need to be honest about your limitations, and because individualism can go to one extreme, like community can also go to, you can go to others, right? Where you're like, I'm spending so much time with so many people that actually have no relationships of depth, and I'm, just totally exhausted. So, so there's not only just like, you can spend too much time alone. It's like you could actually spend so much time, because you need both. Like you are an individual in community. So like, it could go to the other extreme. And you need to be honest about it and be like, I have hit a limit. I need to spend some time with just me and God, or by myself, or with my family, in order to rebalance these two things.
Yeah, but if it's every second Sunday, you'd argue maybe you're not even in community, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I guess we've almost, I feel like, hit on like a little bit of like a Sabbath rest kind of conversation in amongst this, right? Because what we've done is we've identified that community is the important thing, that we are designed and we're made to operate within community, and that's what's most healthy for us. I actually was listening to something from Kerry Newhoff, who's somebody that we both love listening to, and he was talking about how like he almost doesn't really believe in the sabbatical so much of like being the ultimate savior of pastors. A sabbatical being a period of time where a pastor would take off from the church, maybe go and do some research, but basically to fill the cup up. But he was saying it's actually just way more important to have just solid rhythms and habits that mean that you're not like the only way you're going to survive is by taking some big amount of time off. That actually your day-to-day schedule, like Jesus, is actually just healthily built with rest in it so that you can continue to operate in community like we're designed. Would you agree?
Good. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I think that's it.
It's like the rule of life, right? Like just having a solid rule of life that, you know, incorporates rest into it.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to hit breaking point of like, I've been in so much community that I just have to like kind of like go away and hide. And instead of doing that, actually, I'm just going to be in my word every morning, and I'm going to prioritize having an hour in my day so that each day I can get up and operate in community in a healthy way, and I can actually have something to pour out instead of just pouring out of an empty cup. I'm actually allowing him to fill into me as well.
That's real good. I wonder if we could like kind of like for you specifically, like what's an area of individualism that God's kind of asked you to counter? Like, has there been an area where you've been like, wow, like this has been a journey to walk through, like I'm being really individualistic here and I need to sort this out?
Yeah, that's a good thought. I think just because of our role and the nature of it, like leading people in a church community, often find myself on the other end of the spectrum where it's like spend so much time in community that I'm like, oh, we need to like figure out how to have some more time as a family. And so, and not to say like, oh, I don't struggle with individualism, because I definitely do. Like, I think, you know, there are plenty of times where I get to the end of the day and I'm just ready to look at the TV, but like my wife Tamara is like keen for a chat because we haven't talked, and I'm just like, I just want to watch TV, and it's like, I just gonna need to let that go because like we need to have this conversation, and sometimes I just turn it off and sometimes I don't, and I'm like, that probably was like, you know, pretty hurtful to just show that I wasn't really interested. So there's definitely a struggle with that still. But I think, for my family in particular, it's more the other side where it's like, wow, we've been out like 6 out of the 7 nights this week, or 5 out of the 7 nights, and we just really haven't taken any time to just have some like personal time with God or together as a family, because we're doing a lot with other people, or being like, oh man, we've got so many people that we spend time with, but who are the like close friends that we would regularly spend time with that we're not really making time for because of this. So so I think I find myself on the other end, but which is still just as much of a problem.
Right, yeah. Like you said, too much of one or too much of the other. We need a happy balance, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if we just think about our young adults today. We've grown up in the social media kind of culture. We've grown up really in a culture in New Zealand that has become very secularized, that has really prioritized this idea of living for self, and consumerism has bought into that, where we actually, the goal of life, if you ask many people, especially outside of the church, like, what's the goal of life? Oh, it's to be happy and to be loved and to love. For people who have like kind of grown up in that culture, maybe haven't really put too much thought into this idea of individualism and its danger, where's a good place to start? Like start unpacking that. Like, what's one kind of place where they can like look to start changing in their life, where they can break away from this culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one place that could be a good place to start is like, if it's like night 3 in a row of like, I've eaten my dinner and now I'm putting Netflix on, like thinking about what could I actually be doing with some other people? And it doesn't have to be some sort of like, we're going to do this, massive big outreach thing, or we're going to like do a Bible study tonight. It could just be like, let's have some people over tonight and just enjoy each other's company, because that in itself matters. And that can be a place to start. That if you're like, oh, actually, I spend more nights a week watching shows than I don't, then be like, what could I just like have a night a week where I just invite like other students around or whatever, and we have dinner together and just see where that goes. And so, yeah, rather than feel like, oh, I now have to start this ministry, it's just like, it's just something small I can do where rather than spending another night alone, I'm spending it with other people, building relationship. And yeah, I think that's a small place that you could start.
This is great. Yeah. Sometimes you got to turn off the HGTV. You got to turn off the Grand Designs, House Hunters, you know.
That's it. There's only so many
Start living
episodes.
for others, guys. Come on.
Yeah, I've started to see a few repeats.
What are the two brothers? I'm trying to think of the two brothers. There's two brothers that do like house,
one's
renos. What's that? Do you know their names?
No, one's like the sales guy and one's the like renovator guy. Yeah,
just iconic. Are they twins?
Is this just like the 2025 version of like Home Makeover Extreme Edition? That
man,
that's what it is. Yeah.
So do I. Move that bus. Like, that was on.
Do you know? I actually heard the other day that apparently people that actually went on that show and got like blessed with one of those houses actually just most of the time they've done studies afterwards, it's ruined their life because the like rateable value of their house is just like skyrocketed, and usually their incomes mean they can't afford the rates, they can't afford the power for like the bowling alleys that have been installed in their house. And like
they're in there like mortgage free though, eh? Like the are they?
I don't think they are.
No, I don't think they make that. Like, I mean, all of the house was like paid for, but if they've got money on the land, I don't think the show is paying that off.
Yeah.
Oh, I just always assumed like they're just like
sky high rates. Plus, they're living usually in areas that aren't like, you know, like where you would find that kind of house, and so they can't even really sell it on for the.
Yeah, and they get targeted for burglary because people see it on TV and then they're But yeah, I don't think so. I think you already own the house and they just come do up the house that you have. So if you've got a mortgage, the mortgage stays.
Man, imagine trying to do something really nice for someone and then it just ruining their life.
We were just sitting at home crying, just thinking this has just completely changed their life. But hey, you can't find worth in things, guys. And
there you go. That's it.
Counter the culture in that. Come on. Right, bro. We have a question that we like to ask all of our guests, and I say all of our guests, but you know, going forward, we will ask all of our guests. But it's can you give us like one area of your life, one area of culture that God has been asking you to counter? Is there something that comes to your mind straight off the bat?
Yeah. I think one thing that I feel like God has called me to do and has become more apparent over time is just, especially when I'm teaching, is like vulnerable honesty. And just being totally honest. And I guess what I mean by that is like not only, hey, this is what I have struggled with in the past, but like this is what I am struggling with right now. Like I spoke at youth group on Friday night talking about relationships, and as I was putting that together, there was something that God was like, I felt like God wanted me to share that was like, this isn't just a past thing, like I'm still having to work through this now. And and so often I sort of think and feel like, all right, God, do I have to share this one? I'd rather people not, but I just feel, I just feel like in my teaching and in conversation, that's what God has called me to, is just to be completely honest. And sometimes it's about really superficial things like, about my socks having to match my outfit, and people bring them up, and I'm like, I hate that I had to.
Or that you like Samsung better than iPhone.
Do you?
That's not even true.
That? Because I feel like that is there is a lot of conversation based around that now for you. Is that something that you feel like you were too vulnerable in?
It's sometimes people bring that up, or and I'm saying it now, so now more people know. But like, or like the fact that I love to drink milk, like I drink milk every night, and so people like bring it up. They're like, I go to their house tonight.
Hot water? Are you a hot water drinker?
Nah.
Oh,
I go to someone's house and like coffee, tea, milk, or they'll like be like, I see your socks match, and I'm just like, I just hate that like everybody knows that about me, but I don't know. I feel like it sort of breaks down some barriers to then talk about some actual real honest stuff awesome. That
I think
actually
that's
matter.
The burden of a preacher, honestly, is that like your anecdotes are going to be the only point of conversation for many of the people in your congregation.
Yeah.
You could preach your heart out on a sermon of deep theology. 90% of the people will be talking about your like intro story. Then
the fact that you still haven't run that marathon you said you would. Yeah, I get that. Oh, that's awesome.
So good, man. Come on. Hey, look, boys, I just feel like this chat has just been so valuable. And like I said, kind of a little bit earlier, Isaac, I just so appreciate how you can just get under the surface of things and really just provide us some depth. And so thank you for doing that today.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Thank you for just investing into our young adults. And hey, we hope you have enjoyed this podcast, and make sure you share it with your mates if you did, and just get the word around about these podcasts. We want them to be a valuable resource for you, and we want to be able to keep doing them. But show us that you're loving them so that we know that we're doing a good thing here. But hey, we just love it, and make sure you do hit follow so that you can keep up to date with all of the things going on with this podcast. Make sure you're following the Crossroads Church YA Instagram. That's where we do all of this community stuff that we've been talking about. That's where we let you know about what's happening. So if you're not on that social media detox at the moment, make sure you're following the Crossroads YA Instagram. But hey, it's been great chatting. Hope you have a great rest of your week, whatever you're doing. We love you, and we'll catch you later.
Peace.